Welcome back to the Fear
and Beer podcast,
where we discuss all things Halloween Horror Nights, horror movies,
and just a little bit of beer.
I'm Nick.
And I'm Seamus.
Like scary movies.
Uh-huh.
Here's Johnny.
It's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
Did you miss me? Aren't you drinking?
I never drink. Why?
Before we get into tonight's episode, we want to remind all of those listening on Apple Podcasts to drop us a 5-star review. It helps us grow as a podcast and build our audience. If you're listening on Spotify or any other platform, follow us, and don't forget to share with friends and family who might have a little bit of the strange in them as well.
And while you're on those socials, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, be sure to find us, Fear and Beer Pod. Give us a like, share, and you can always message us. We love to interact with all you guys. So this is the first time in a while we've recorded back-to-back weeks.
We're really good at that and
We took our
actually
break.
being here together in
Yeah,
the same room. We're really good at this whole like
We took our break. When we
not
needed
being in the same room thing.
it. Yeah, we took a break. But we're back.
Well, yeah, I mean, I felt like I was dying 2 weeks ago. You felt like you were dying last week. So it's like, rather than give each other
Just keep it
sickness
going
and
back
shit,
and forth
we might
for
as well
months.
just like not be crazy assholes. I see a little timer on the screen. Is that new?
Oh, no, that's been there.
Oh,
That's been there.
Weird.
This is new. If you're watching on YouTube,
yes,
this
that's
little
new. I don't have that
thing
yet.
is new.
Eventually, I'll invest in that as well.
If you're listening, what I'm referencing is one of those little
true. If you're not watching the YouTube video,
is
you
one of
know what
those
we're
little
talking about.
microphone stands on the table.
Notice how he sounds a lot better than me.
So hopefully it sounds
This
better.
is probably why.
Hopefully. So today we are going to be talking about 2010's IPs that we'd like to see at Horror Nights. And we've done episodes like this in the past. We've done speculation maps based off of eras, decades. So 80s, 90s, 2000s. And with those, we added like some originals that fit with the time frame and stuff like that. But I honestly feel like with the 2010s, maybe it's because it's so recent and nothing like truly as a trend like stands out. Like it was a lot harder to do that. So instead of doing a full...
and well, there's also, not to cut you off, but we've discovered that in the last 10 years, it's kind of gone from the usual horror tropes to more of a like social horror, psychological, like heavy on the psychological, like hauntings. And a lot of them have underlining meanings or messages in them. So it's a little bit, it's less like, here is spooky setting, here is people in spooky setting, here is things happening to spooky people in spooky setting. Like it's not like that anymore. It's a lot of it's like the Get Outs, the Us's, even the Conjuring. Like for much of it, as much of it being a, you know, a haunting type horror movie, there's less like things being thrown at you and more just like trying to find smart ways to do jump scares, which is good. But we were finding that the 2010s, a lot of the movies are great movies, but they don't lend themselves to some sort of horror attraction.
Yeah, no, it's definitely tough. And like when you think 80s, you get those images in your head. You think 90s, like we got to come up with some cool like original ideas, whereas this one we were just left pondering a little bit. So what we decided, instead of doing a speculation map per se, we gathered a list of some of the heavy hitters, the people have suggested, stuff that we saw,
some big names, some over here stuttering, sorry, some big names, but also some underground, I don't say underground, but ones that
Lesser.
maybe you didn't think about.
Yep. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go through the list and just kind of talk about the movies. Could they work? What would work from them? Would they not work at all? So instead of doing a straight up, here's 10 houses, here's 5 scare zones, here's a show, we're just going to go through some IPs from 2010s and then discuss if they would make good houses and what we would like to see, hopefully at some point. Just because, again, like, the speculation map era ones that we've done have been fun because we got to put our own spin on it. We made up originals that, like, really fit, but, like, really thinking back to, like, 2010s to 2019s, like, what from pop culture that would we pull? It's, like we did a blockbuster house, we did a Y2K house. It's not, what am I gonna do, a vegan house or like a
The 2010s are hard. I think we skipped the 2000s, didn't we?
We did a 2000s.
Did we do 2000s ones too?
Yeah, which was fun. I can't tell you what
they're
was
all
on
running,
that one.
They're all running together now. I'm losing track of time. But all right, yes, 2000. I mean, again, I think part of it is it's super recent. And
The Twitter house.
I don't know if, being that we are not elder millennials, but we're like mid-tier elder millennials, we're getting
I was just being
older.
I was being an adult during this era.
Well, right. I mean, that's the thing, is like I had graduated college by this point. Like,
Yeah.
2010 was the year I graduated college. So between graduating college, going to the police academy, losing that job, and working my current job for the last 10, 12
Yeah.
years, you're right. It's like I was adulting during this era.
Yeah.
So like, it's not like I didn't enjoy this stuff. I do. But it's finding time to check out new things. Like I told you, like, what was it, like 2 or 3 weeks ago, or maybe even a month ago, we were talking about, what movie was it? It was it was Krampus.
Oh yeah.
Like I had watched Krampus for the first time last year.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know what year that came out. I don't know if that's a 2010s movie or a 2000s movie, but it's kind of that point where it's like a lot of the new things over the last 10 years,
Jumbled together.
I just either haven't watched or took forever to catch up with. Like if I was going to watch a horror movie, it was like you said, I'm going to go back and watch like the classics,
stuff
the
that
ones
I-
that I
yeah.
remember as a kid,
Yeah.
that I grew up on when I had a lot more time to watch
Yeah.
movies and play video games. So like, yeah, I think that's part of it. I think being an adult during this era has changed it a little bit. And I don't want to say that like, because there's probably people in our audience that were adults during the 90s or were adults during the 2000s that like were like, well, I don't see the correlation here, but like I think it's weird. It's weird to explain.
I think it was just a different generation, like a different time frame. A lot of the stuff that was happening was digital media, social media platforms, and that was like a
right.
And how do you translate that?
And I think that, like we said before, I think the movies have changed. Like the themes have changed. It's they've gotten away from that retro tropey stuff. Like the stuff that started in the 70s and 80s got memed to death. The 90s kind of tried to bring it back. 2000s
Played a little bit.
played
with
a little
it,
bit, but
not much.
2000s were a little weak, only in certain ways, because like, again, we're talking about social media. That's kind of like the birth of Facebook, like the birth of a lot of that shit. And then of course 2010s has like kind of been the proliferation of technology and having everything at your fingertips. So yeah, I don't know. It's weird.
And again, maybe in 10 or 20 years, we could look back at the 2010s
probably,
and
for
stuff will
sure.
stick
'Cause
out.
who knows what the fuck we're gonna be watching
Yeah.
in like 2050? I mean, crap, I'm
stuff
alive
will-
in 2050,
yeah,
but
stuff will stick out, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Like it did for us when it
Right.
was those other episodes. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to discuss some IPs, see how they would or wouldn't work, and that's about that. You want to talk about the beer we got? Because
Yeah.
it is
Yeah, so-
horror themed, but not related to tonight, really.
Nick has kind of become the official provider of the beers whenever I'm over here. I gotta start pulling my own weight, but so we got this thing called Mr. Knife Hands, part of a spooky series, and what we were kind of deliberating or debating before we started recording was who actually brews this. The cans is brewed and packaged by King Fox Brewery, but they have something on their something on Untapped called, and it's on the can too. It's like a donut, and it's called La Adjuncterie. So I'm wondering if this is like their series or run of interesting flavors, interesting ingredients. Because King Fox Brewery is a brewery in Hialeah, Florida. They do a lot of like your standard different craft beers, but like the La Adjuncterie thing seems to be like interesting ways of making your traditional styles. Because this is a strawberry lemonade sour ale with marshmallow in it.
Ooh.
Really not what I expected when you show me Spooky Series. Mr. Knife Hand looks like...
I didn't either. I was expecting like a red amber.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like... well, I was thinking a stout,
Okay,
to be honest with you. But, it looks like Freddy Krueger with like an elfin Freddy Krueger.
Yeah.
So, it makes sense. Strawberry lemonade. It's going to look like blood.
Yeah.
They just will look like blood, I guaranteed. Like a thick red blood. But it sounds like it's going to be fire.
Interesting.
To be honest with you.
6.2%.
Because sour ales are the best. I love sour ales.
And the strawberry lemonade.
Well, yeah, strawberry
Nice and
lemonade.
refreshing.
It's going to be heavy on the strawberry. Before we crack this and try it, my guess it'll be heavy on the strawberry. Maybe a little bit of lemonade on the back
I don't
end.
think you'll even get much marshmallow. I think it's just gonna be
Well,
like a coating, almost like
right. So with
You
me,
won't tell
so with
what
the
it is,
marshmallow,
but-
I think what it'll be, it's gonna add that sweetener. It's almost like having lactose in it.
Yeah.
Like there might be a hint of marshmallow flavor to it, but it'll be primarily the you'll get the sour, but they'll have that like sweet after.
Yeah.
Which
Yep.
is what the marshmallow is giving you. These are usually not this. I haven't had anything from this brewery before. I don't think.
No, I have not either.
But this will just the style is usually fire.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a stout person, not stout. I'm sorry. If you're a sour person, normally these ones with like lactose or marshmallow or
That's the
something
way to
else
go.
along those lines, they're usually fire. So
Yeah.
it could very well be milkshakey type.
Which I like. I like the milkshake sours.
Milkshake beers are good if you can get them ripe. If you get them at the right time. But yeah. So I
Cool.
guess we can crack it and see what it
See what
tastes
we
like.
got. Woo! I am excited because I did honestly forget about these things. I haven't got them that too long ago, but
Woo! Wow.
Oh.
That smell.
so it looks like it's a
man.
normal looking.
Okay, well I was
Yeah.
wrong. I thought
but
it
I
was going to
would've-
be blood red.
But does it have like a little pink to it? Not
I mean,
really.
I guess a little bit, but
I mean,
not really.
I can't tell if it's the can.
Well, what I'm thinking about
or the
is like
lights.
because there's. I mean, I guess there's definitely a tinge of red in there. I'm colorblind, so I can't really tell, but I'm thinking like there's beers I've had in the past where like, like it's a blueberry something and it's like straight
wow.
purple.
Wow, that smells sour.
Yeah. You can smell what it's
Yeah,
gonna,
off
what it's
the
gonna
nose,
taste
it's
like.
just off the nose. It's very sour smelling. I don't know how to describe that other than that, but you said it was pretty mild in the pucker category.
So according to their Untapped page for this particular beer, it's their first in their lineup for Spooky Series. In one taste, you won't be able to sleep again.
Oh,
Aha,
boy.
I get it, but it says the pucker level is moderate, and it smells like it's gonna be pretty sour.
Yeah.
But then again, we'll see. If this is like intense, I don't want to know what their like super heavy intense level.
if you
Like, if this is moderate and this is super intense. We haven't tried it yet, so I guess we'll be the judge of that in a second. But
wow,
that's moderate.
I wouldn't call that moderate.
Woo!
Nope.
And I have a lot of sours in my in my repertoire.
And that's not that I don't like it. I actually really like it.
This means.
But
this
you
means
feel
good
it.
things.
You feel it right underneath your ears.
Oh, it's
that warhead.
It's that warhead.
It's the
yeah,
warhead
it's that
sour.
feeling right behind your jaw. Your jaw clenches.
Well, it's not necessarily moderate. I would say
Yeah,
that
I don't know
is
if
a
I'd
little bit
call
of
that
false
moderate. Well,
advertising.
but you know what though? Maybe it's just phenomenal marketing on their part. Because now I want to go try one that is
That's, like,
labeled
crazy.
extreme. Because I want to know how extreme this can get. Because
Yeah.
bros,
But it
like,
does get
if
me
this
going
is
back.
moderate. So I guess we got to take a trip to Hialeah, which is like down by Miami.
Ooh.
Woo.
Oh, that'll
I
get you
think.
going.
I could be wrong. I
Whoa,
could
that
be
wakes
way
you up.
off, but I'm pretty sure Hialeah is in Miami. But definitely should check them out.
Ooh. It's a
And,
good beer. It is tasty. It is
So
refreshing.
I wonder if they got other things to like. Where did you get this?
I believe I picked this up from Half Barrel Project.
Half Barrel?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would make sense. So you're probably not going to be able to find it at like a Total Wine or like a typical like bar,
Beer
like,
place,
like,
yeah.
like a typical like liquor store. I wonder if Nightly has it. I'd have to. It's been a while since I've been in there, so maybe. But
They used to always have a pretty deep selection, but
it is sour as hell. It is really good. I mean, I'm probably going to give this. If I'm going to rate this, we're not a beer podcast. If I was to rate this, I'd probably give this close to a 4. And it's really, really good.
Ooh. No, that is good. I do like that. All right, so
God damn.
let's jump in. Now that we got the beer out of the way, let's jump into these 2010
Maybe I ain't
IPs.
going to sleep tonight now.
Yeah, right. So let's start off with this one right here. Like I said, before recording this, we compiled a list of a bunch of IPs, and we're like, wow, this could work. This might not work. We're trying to nitpick and figure out. And I was like, you know what? Let's just read through the list, and not necessarily debate, but like throw the ideas on the wall, see what lands, and then maybe at the end of us discussing each IP, we'll have a better stance on like, hey, this would actually be a good one. And let's start off with one that I would say is pretty divisive amongst the table between me and you.
Oh, divisive. That's a good way to put it, I guess.
I have said before, I'm not a huge lover of this movie.
Probably going to agree anyways,
but I do think that this would be a fun house, and that is Midsommar. We've talked about this in the past.
yeah.
I
I love this movie.
I've said my piece on it. I mean, to reiterate what I've said in the past, I'm not a fan. I think it's too long. I think it's too drawn out. The imagery is beautiful. It does nothing to scare me. It's not unsettling. And that's the problem we found with a lot of these movies, where a lot of it's that like psychological paranoia based horror,
To start,
which is hard to translate.
It's an A24 movie.
Yeah.
And they have a reputation for making weird, out of left field type movies. Now this is also, what is the director's name? He did Hereditary. Oh my God! I'm sorry, audience. I don't know names off the top of my head anymore. I'm kind of getting old.
Well, it's not Ari Aster, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
it's Ari Aster. Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty sure.
Because we've talked. Yeah, at Ari Aster. Yeah, because
Right.
we've talked about.
Now I
him
have to double check.
before.
Did he do Hereditary? So I don't look like an
He
idiot.
did Hereditary
All
as
right,
well.
good. So I know what I'm fucking talking about. Yes, I couldn't remember his name. Ari Aster. So Ari Aster also has a very specific vision for his movies, and you can tell because both of those movies are really good. Obviously, we differ a little bit on Midsummer. Probably on Hereditary too, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I gotta rewatch them to give them their fair shake, but
So
yeah.
great movie. I think we're probably going to differ a little bit on whether we believe it works as a house. Mm-hmm. Personally, for me, I don't know how well it'll work as a house. Mm-hmm. Just because it's outdoor. It's a completely outdoors movie for the most part. Like,
Yeah.
do you have like the room, like the little huts and shit that they stay in? And you get the hut that she sets on fire at the end of it, or they set on fire at the end of it. But they don't have a lot of indoor spaces. Mm-hmm. And there's not a lot there character-wise. Set-piece wise, yes. Mm-hmm. But it's going to be a lot of people in white robes jumping out at you.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to stay true to the property, like they're not outwardly scary people. They do creepy shit that makes you feel super uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And again, we've talked about it in the past. Like, I'm a snob, so like, I don't even. Maybe not being a snob, but like the thing is like traditional horror movies don't scare me.
Yeah.
I don't get scared like hide under a blanket when I watch a horror movie because traditionally they don't. Yes, shocking. You know, good jump scares will make me jump, but I don't get like scared, so I would prefer the unsettling feeling. I want to be able to I want to be at the edge of my seat, and that's what that movie does for me. Is like I sit there and I watch the whole thing like this, because like it's not outwardly scary, but it's unsettling and it makes you feel icky inside. So how does that translate to an attraction, like a walk-through attraction? I think visually it's stunning. But again, it's all outdoors.
Yeah.
So I find it hard to picture, and not to say they can't do an outdoorsy house inside. They do it all the time. But I just feel like being that it's usually bright and sunny for the most part of that movie.
Yeah.
Like the only really like.
Well, and that's like one of the unsettling parts is that it takes place in that
right
where it's like the sun is
agreed
just barely goes down.
Like the only real true horror scene in that movie is the very beginning, where the girl kills her parents and kills herself.
Yeah,
like that scene is the only real true horror movie
or
scene,
something, or her parent,
right? So like that would be like a great haunted house scene.
Yeah,
but outside of that, like I guess you could do a lot of like I'll give it this. If they did it, it would be a lot of cool effects, like simulating a burning house or burning building. Yeah. That would be really cool to see how they pull that off.
Which something that was similar, not fully engulfed, but that burning house smell by the schoolhouse portion of Scary.
Right.
So I would leave that whole first part out, the whole sister killing the family part. I would jump it right into more of like, what is it, like Sweden or something, or Switzerland?
It's Sweden, I believe.
But I would jump back. I would jump right into like the traditional storytelling part of that, where you're like kind of walking into the room where they were staying, where it has all the pictures. It almost reminds me of like church, where there's the stations of the commandment or whatever the hell that stuff is in the Christian lore. But like they had all the pictures that like progressively told the story of Midsommar. So I'd have that kind of as an intro scene. I mean, if you think back to the Universal Monsters house this year, in the scale that they built up in that opening area with the dig site, it would be fun to do a scare, something along those lines where it was a big rock cliff and
On
the
the
people
old people
falling
jump off of
down or
it.
something.
Yeah.
And you could do some really gross prosthetics laying on the ground right there. Obviously, the scenes inside of the huts would be interesting. You could probably skip the scene where the dude's having sex with like a bunch of old people watching. That scene I would probably leave out.
Yeah,
'cause
that's probably
just-
that probably wouldn't go over well with the visiting audience.
I think it would be fun to do and scary to, you would need a bunch of, well, maybe not. You could probably do it with 2 or 3 characters, but having them dress, like the children doing the ribbon around the pole.
Oh yeah,
You could have a scene where you're kind of walking in front of that little area, and it would be very bright and grass laid footing. But I do think there's enough like different settings to be able to pull it off and then tell the Midsommar story where maybe the main characters aren't the you do have the people in the robes, but you have the,
Well, I think
the
that's what it would
Florence
be.
Pugh based character where it's really, again, much like the movie, like a transformation movie. In the beginning she's playing that victim running around, and then every time you see her she's a little bit more at ease with things, and she's a little bit, and then the ending scene with just the big flower dress and stuff like that. I would it be a scary house? I mean, there could be scares, but I don't think it would be scary. Is it doable? I think so. I don't think it would be their best bet, but I think it would be interesting enough to give it a shot.
yeah.
So I think they could
No,
make
I
some
can see
stuff
what
happen.
you're saying. I just feel like story-wise, it'd be a little boring.
It would be tough to translate that fully.
I think. I mean, that's again, it's personal opinion. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if it's like everybody's gonna share the same opinion, but I think that like visually it'll be really good. But
Isn't that crazy?
outside of that, I'm not so sure that it would work.
Isn't that crazy how like I vote yes for the house?
Oh, yeah,
Laura, no,
100%.
I don't like the
But that's
movie.
thing-
You
but
like
that-
the movie.
Well, that's the
It's
thing, though.
funny.
So if you think about who we are, kind of, so like you are very much like if you think about like a movie and how a movie's made, you're very much like the cinematographer,
Yeah.
the visual
Yeah.
side of it. I'm more of the screenwriter when it comes to like I want a solid story that makes you think and
Yeah.
makes you feel creeped out
Bring
and
you in on
unsettling.
it. Yep.
Like. And again, that doesn't say. I'm not saying that to say that you don't like a good story and I
No,
don't like
yeah.
the visuals.
But we look for different.
We
things.
look for different things,
Yep.
and I think that like that's why you can watch like a Terrifier and
Yeah.
be like, "This is awesome! It's the greatest movie I've ever seen." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's cool.
It's fun.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's yeah,
a nothing story.
Visually, it's cool.
It's a nothing story.
but there's nothing to it.
No, it's nothing. It's a slasher.
And that I think that's it's the same way with The Witch, and I'm sure we're gonna talk about that
I'm
at
sure
some
we'll
point.
get there.
But again, visually, visually stunning movie. Even though it's like a washed out, gray in the middle of the woods type thing, but the story is really good.
Yeah.
So I think that's where we kind of differ. And again, I'm not saying that what I think is a good story doesn't mean what you like is a bad
It's not a
story.
good- yeah.
It's just I think what we prefer.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of funny how that would flip when it comes to a house.
So let's move down the list then. So next up was one that was suggested, one that I hand up. I'm gonna embarrass myself on here. I haven't seen this movie. I've heard about it forever. I obviously know a good amount about it.
Well, you're in good company because there's a lot of movies I haven't seen either.
And that would be Train to Busan. And that's and I know that's
I
high up.
haven't watched it either.
I know that's high up there on a lot of people's lists. I get the gist of it just from seeing like clips, trailers, stuff like that. I don't know if I could necessarily give you a definitive, this would make a cool house, but I think
Well, I mean, if you just take the basic premise, put like I said, put man or put I say man, but put anybody, put main
Put
character
humans,
in confined space, name train, i.e. train,
Yeah.
and add zombies.
yeah,
I think that like you can take that premise and make a good house out of it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to necessarily follow the Train to Busan story because again, there's not much. I mean, there is a story. It's a very good human story from everything I've seen. I haven't watched it, but I know that from what people have said that what makes it better than most zombie movies is that there's a really good human element to it, human story with the little girl and the father who's never like present for her and is never really like there for her. And then like at the very end, the twist is he gets bit and
Yeah.
he has to like sacrifice himself and she's torn up about it. And like, he finally understands like the value of having time with your family and everything. So that part of it makes it a great movie.
yeah,
But at the end of the day, it's still just a zombie movie.
Yeah.
And
Zombies on trains.
zombies, as far as house attraction go, work because it's just one of those like zombies will never not work in a house type of setting, like or like an attraction type setting.
It's a go-to.
Obviously, movies they get kind of boring because it's the same thing over and over again. But I think the idea of putting you on a simulated train and have zombies coming at you, I think that would be kind of interesting. It would create that claustrophobia, which you want in a house. So I don't know. I can see it happen. It's not a lot to talk about because that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
But I could see why that would make a good movie.
I mean, we did see how fun train scenes were this year with Descents and Destruction.
Yeah, and then even those movies, like, even that house, like, you're only on the train for, like,
one little part, but it was fun.
Very
like
small
I do
part.
like that. I liked that aspect of it, and I think that they would have a visual field day of making it simulated. That when we were in the house on the train in Descents, it was obviously run down, busted. People were living in it, whatever. But I think the Universal team would have a field day, with maybe video screens outside
make it
of
look
it
like it's
to make it
moving.
look like it's moving.
Yep.
Having it actually maybe like
like you can feel that
kind of
movement a little
moving
bit.
up and down a little
like
bit.
like they say in the tour, they spend a fuck ton of
$1 million a
fuck
house.
ton of money on these houses, like just because they can. Like it would be technically, it may be one of the most advanced houses they've ever done.
Yeah, if they nailed it like
if they
that.
can nail it to do that, like it doesn't have to be like extreme motion, but just enough to give you that sense of
It could be on like
train
springs.
moving. Even as you're walking, it feels like it's moving,
Yeah.
and it with the moving screens, it gives you the sense of the train actually moving.
Yeah, it could just be the floor panels that like
Right.
go up and down a
Exactly.
slight, but you'd have to do it in a way that
Well,
there would be no trip.
You simulate climbing up onto a train platform.
Yeah.
that gives you the height, and then your floors
Yeah.
are the ones that move.
So I think that would be interesting enough. Again, I'd like to fully watch it to be able to comment further on like exact aspects of the movie that would work. But I think that general sense of like zombie train, like that would be an interesting aspect to have them play around with. Next up, The Babadook.
Another good movie, another great story. Visually, not as visual as the first couple movies we talked about, but I think this one again, another one that's kind of hard to translate to an attraction because the bad guy in this movie, he's talked about quite a bit, and you do get to see him a little tiny bit, but it's not very much. You barely see the monster at all. You hear the monster quite a bit. That noise is creepy as hell. That click thing or whatever, the noise, whatever the hell it makes. I think there's ways to do it, but the majority of this movie is themed around loss,
Like lore.
and family dynamics, especially a single mother type of dynamic with a very tough to deal with kid who's dealing with his own trauma. Like there's a lot of
It's a
lot
very
of elements
layered
to this
movie.
movie, but as far as making it an attraction, it would be really hard to do.
Yeah, like
I
like
mean, I
the
say
character.
that, and we loved the Black Phone, but I feel like the Black Phone gave you bad guy and good guy, and you saw them the entire movie, and it fits, it works in that sense. Whereas this one, like, it would be very noise based.
Yeah.
But what do you do for set pieces? What does your sets look like?
Yeah, I mean, again,
It's pretty much in an Australian flat. And that's basically it.
yeah. I mean, I haven't seen this movie probably in 4 or 5 years at this point.
Yeah, I gotta go back and rewatch it too.
Again, like we were talking, like you said, great character, cool design. If the movie was more based around a physical being, it would be easier to translate that into a house. But again, from what I remember, it was very like lore based.
Which is why you and the audience is not gonna like my opinion on The Conjuring too when we get to The Conjuring. But continue.
But yeah, I don't know if you could. I mean, you could make any of these work, I'm sure, but I don't think that this would be
Oh
the
yeah,
best
I don't put it
fit.
past them at all.
But I don't think it would be the best fit.
I don't either. And it's one of those properties where it's like if you're gonna waste the time and money building a house on a property, you want to get the ones that are gonna bring people in. And although I'm sure that the Babadook has a very large cult following, I don't think the large number of people going to horror nights, the normies as we call them, are gonna go because the Babadook is a house. Like the Babadook is a horror fan's horror movie.
Yeah.
I know that sounds stupid, but you kind of know where I'm coming from. Where it's like
It's a deep
the
cut.
people that go to spooky conventions or horror conventions, like go to Spooky Empire or go to Spookala or they go to whatever other ones there are outside of Florida, that go to those or go out of their way to go to those types of conventions. They're the ones that are gonna go watch a Babadook movie.
Yeah.
They're gonna get hyped about a house. But the people that they
Just
can
want to do something scary during
right.
Halloween season.
Or it's not even just that. Like they can count their favorite horror movies on their hand.
Yeah.
Like I like Jason, Freddy, and Michael, and
Yeah.
those fans aren't gonna be super hyped about a Babadook house.
No. Yeah.
And I'm not even sure if I am. Like I love the movie, but am I really gonna be super pumped about a house
to go see it? Yeah, I don't. It wouldn't be on
It would
my.
be one of those where I guarantee you it would be. I'm not super sure about it. I'm not super hyped on it. I get there and the house blows me away.
Yeah.
Or not even blow me away, but it's gonna exceed expectations. That's
Yeah.
what I think. I don't think it would be a house where it's like not super hyped on it. Oh, and it totally met my expectations. It's gonna be one of those ones where it's like, oh, this is
that was
actually
fun.
pretty good.
Yeah.
Because
25
they'd
minute
find
wait.
a way to do it, but I'm just not smart enough to
Yeah.
figure out how to make it
No.
work.
All right. Next up, which would make I think a pretty fun house if we leave out the ending. That is Don't Breathe.
Yeah.
This would definitely play on the sensory aspect of things. But again, I mean, the setting would be
The setting's tough
or
to
it's
translate.
it's a house. It's a house.
It's a house, and the bad guy is. I mean, the thing is like this is the problem with this
It
movie
flips
is
on
that
you.
like it flips on you a little bit, which makes it a good movie. Makes it a hard house to really translate.
that
into
that
visual,
aspect wouldn't
especially because like the whole idea is like it's dark and
Yeah.
you have to be quiet because the guy's blind, so he can't see you,
But he can hear you very well.
and he's military, so he's got like military training and
yeah.
So that's what's hard about that movie. And plus, you're right, the ending is disgusting. So like, I don't know how anybody is gonna want to see that. Like, that's gross.
I don't think that would get approved by
That's
anything.
Very, very much trigger warning if you haven't seen the movie.
Yeah, don't. I mean, go see it, but
Watch it, but just know that
Just
the
know
ending
it's-
is disgusting.
grotesque. But
Not even gory; it's just gross.
yeah, I think the aspects of this house could translate to a fun house if they were able to take that and put it on their own thing. Like just like the aspect of like having to creep around. And we're gonna talk about another house.
Yeah, well, there's another
Similar,
house,
but-
another property on our
or,
list
movie,
that I
yeah.
think is gonna fit that theme better.
Yeah, but it's just if the location was a little bit better, if there was maybe a better villain besides just the blind ex-military guy, like that's just not it's just a human. It's a human scary character.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not super. I mean, again,
I wouldn't be selling. I
decent-
wouldn't be buying this one.
decent movie, but I wouldn't be super hyped about the house if they did a house for it.
No, it doesn't do much for me.
Not at all.
Next up, suggested a lot. I finally just saw the second one. Terrifier.
Oh yes, Terrifier.
So over the top
kind of mentioned it
gore.
already. Yeah.
Not sure how much they could get away with,
No, but I mean, all you need for a house like that is the character,
which is
which is really what it
what
comes
these
down to.
what all of these movies we mentioned, I guess kind of besides Babadook, but you don't see him enough, has been lacking is that true
Yeah.
iconic villain.
I mean, let's be honest. I think Art the Clown is kind of like. I don't want to say he's like this generation's like we'll call him Gen Z's slasher. Like obviously, like our generation, we had.
plethora.
Well, not even. I wouldn't even say a plethora. Like our generation, we had like Ghostface.
Yeah.
For when I say ours, like something that was
Released in our time
released.
frame.
We grew up with it. Like
Yeah.
we obviously had the '80s slashes, but we
Yeah.
didn't grow up in the '80s.
Yeah, so
We
I
were
mean-
born in like I was born in the late '80s. You weren't
Yeah.
even born in the '80s.
No,
So it's
yeah.
like
What we saw in
we
theaters.
claim them because we were kids when we saw all those old movies and we were like, these are amazing.
Yeah.
Not old movies, but you know what I mean. Like
Yeah.
like retro movies. So like the classics are obviously the classics for a reason.
Like growing up for us, it was
but
like
our
you said,
slasher was like
Ghostface.
Ghostface. I think is pretty much
and the
it.
other like characters aren't necessarily slashers. I mean, you have Samara from The Ring.
Yeah,
and-
but they're less.
but that's not
so.
slasher. That's just kind of another iconic.
Just another character. Yeah,
Villain or
iconic demon villain thing.
But yeah, so Terrifier.
Art. Oh yeah. I mean, it's this movie completely lends itself
Yep.
to a house.
Yeah.
100%, and it's only because it's a campy, gory slasher that goes completely over the top, knows exactly what it's doing.
Yeah.
Like, it's not one of those movies where it's like, take me serious. Like, no, you're not gonna take this movie serious.
No.
It's you end up laughing halfway through it for the
Oh,
most
yeah.
part because it's so over the top.
Yeah.
But there's so many things you can do with it, and there's so many set pieces that just lend itself to a house.
And again, this movie bounces around a little bit. Like there's enough varying set pieces that it
it's
works.
not just like, I mean, you could do like the pizza shop where he's like sitting there just like
Smiling,
waving at, like
yeah.
smiling, doing his creepy smile, waving at you or whatever.
Yeah. And him walking around with just his garbage bag.
Oh yeah, and you can. I mean, I would totally do like the upside down sawing somebody in half from like
Yep.
the fucking groin down.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a female, but it can just be like a dummy,
just a body, just a body,
just a dead body where he's like going like
Yeah.
sawing through it or whatever. Like this is the house where like this is the gore house. This is in a
Yep.
10 house spec map. This is the house that's going to be like, oh, there's going to be a ton of fucking blood and gore and,
Yep.
and nasty grossness. And that's
you look at a
basically
lot,
what this
and
is.
like if you look deep into some of the houses, like in the past stuff, like too, like that amount of gore. You know, obviously you can leave out some of the sexual nudity aspects.
oh well,
of
right,
it.
you leave that out, but,
But
like,
the gore aspect has been there in a good amount of those houses. Like there's scenes. I mean, look at the one from Freaky. I mean, the girl
Correct.
is sawing the thing
exactly
in half.
right. So you can the gore is fine.
Not an
I
issue.
I mean, again, they've done Michael houses, they've done Friday houses, and Friday is one of the goriest, tittiest movies ever. Like,
Yeah.
there's so many
Just
tits
leave those
in
out.
fucking Friday the 13th.
Yeah,
and
you just
don't
leave that
you leave that
aspect
shit
out.
out. Like you don't need to have that. I think having art alone is scary enough. Mm-hmm. You just add the gore for like the ha-ha part.
Yeah.
He's the part that's scary.
Yeah.
It's him coming out of nowhere going, like and doing his smile thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the Black Phone last year. Whereas
Yeah.
like the Black Phone, there wasn't a lot to it, but the grabber was an effective enough character that like that house probably had some of the best scares, and I think I gave it best scare from my perspective. I think
Yeah. Yep.
I think that's what I voted for, was that house had the best scare, because there were like 2 or 3 times that I
get you
remember
good.
vividly that it got
Dark.
me every single time we went through. I knew it was coming.
Yeah, but it's so dark too. You
And it
kind of
got me,
forget
right.
where you're at, and
Right. So I
bang.
think Art can kind of be that same character where he gets you all the time because he's just creepy, and clowns suck to begin with.
Yeah.
So like, outside of killer clowns from outer space.
Yeah, right. So let's
So
move.
yes, this movie works. I
Yeah.
think everybody would agree. This movie
I
works.
think so too. So moving on to one that you had mentioned earlier, where it might be a little
Oh boy.
differing of opinions, would be The Conjuring. And we could just group this as the Conjuring universe.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about the Conjuring universe because there's too many movies in this series to go through one by one.
And you're right in the aspect of when we were talking. You're like Conjuring 1. I don't know if it necessarily worked, and I agree.
I would rather see specifically Annabelle,
Yeah.
because at least Annabelle gives you something tangible to fear, which is the doll.
And again, it's a actual, like, that's your villain.
Right, there's
That's
something in it. Like, obviously, she doesn't move a whole lot in the movie, but she's there, she's creepy, and it lends itself a little bit better to a house than, say, The Conjuring. Now, I know there's Conjuring fans out there. I know you're all Conjuring
Oh, I
fans.
love yeah.
And I love the movie, don't get me wrong. Conjuring is probably one of the best haunted house movies, at least in contemporary times.
Yeah.
Like over the last 20 years, it's probably one of the
probably
best,
top 5.
like easily.
Yeah.
So yes, great movie, but much like the Babadook, it doesn't really show you the bad guy
Yeah, I mean, it's
in a lot of
the
ways.
possession movies are tough because it's just taking over a character that
Right.
we've already, that's just a human character.
And again, like we say this in Hill House worked really well.
yeah,
But I think with the Hill House, there were enough set pieces
yeah,
to kind of translate into a house. Like there were a lot of iconic
and the
scenes.
ghost characters played a factor
and the characters
too.
played a factor too. I think with The Conjuring is like how many. I mean, can you really make a scene out of sitting on basement stairs and then getting the
Yeah.
Like you, how do
one.
you
That's one. That's one room.
like how
That's
do you
it.
make that work? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's one room. You know, the other scare you could have the whole Bathsheba possessed character up on top of the wardrobe and but again,
right.
we filled up 2 rooms.
Right,
That's not going to fill a
You're
house.
better off, like we said, kind of do the whole universe in one house, make it a compilation house,
Yeah.
and just pick the best parts of each of those movies.
I would do it
see
sort of
them.
kind of like how like Case Files. It was broken up almost by cases. And
No,
this could
that's
be like
actually a
an
great idea.
Ed and Lorraine case
Well,
movie.
right, and then have like Ed and Lorraine kind of be like in the very beginning, kind of like talking you to like
Do the case.
he's talking you into the first room.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And
Like,
then
kind
the
of like
audio clips of like, oh, case file number 372.
That would make
the,
sense.
You know,
yes.
the whatever house, this house, you know,
Right. The haunting of whatever.
Valak, you know, case number 36. Like,
Right.
and introduce each little room, and it doesn't have to be each room's a different, but you know, you could do 4 or 5 cases. That takes up 8 to 10 rooms, and you could break it up that way. You could have it almost like, you could almost have like segue rooms in between, and have that segue room be their inside their house, like that antique room where
Yes.
they keep all the possessions
in the room where all
so
the
like you're
haunted
walking
items
towards
are.
one, you look at the Annabelle doll, and then you walk into the Annabelle based 2-room
That would be-
story.
yeah, that would
you
be-
walk
that'd be a
back
good
into the an aisle, the different aisle in that room.
Yeah, I just-
here's this
Right. I just
urn
want
or
I just want
whatever.
a room where like you're walking, it's really claustrophobic, and Annabelle is just kind of sitting there, and she's really close to your face.
Yeah.
And you watch her head turn as you walk by. Like that would
Yeah.
freak the fuck out of me.
Yep.
Because I hate dolls. I hate creepy dolls.
Yeah.
So that movie gets me.
I think that's the best case for this property.
And again, if we do it like that, totally see it.
Yeah.
But if we're talking like, oh, we're gonna do
Conjuring
a
one.
Conjuring house, it's hard for me. It's like saying that we're gonna do a Paranormal Activity house, and I
Yeah.
think they've done that before, haven't they?
No.
They haven't.
No.
So like, it's talking about like doing a paranormal activity. I'll say it again. That's a hard house to translate because it's nothing but a bunch of ghost activity.
Yeah, it's just the sheets getting pulled. You can't create that.
It's
Fucking
you
Toby.
you can do it, but it's hard. And how do you time it?
Yeah.
You already struggle enough with timing when it comes to human characters, let alone like
Yeah.
mechanics that are timed.
Yeah,
it's
that's
harder.
That's tough. So another one that we've talked a lot about previously. I don't think we need to really talk more about this. It's a white whale. Who knows if it'll ever come? Will it work? 100%. That's just it.
Oh yeah,
And that's because it's the remake.
we're just gonna name it because if we don't name it, you guys are gonna eat us alive. So yes, it would work as a house.
We don't need to talk about it. Again,
It's
it's
1 and
got your
2.
main character, your villain, plenty of set pieces, great imagery,
Yep.
perfect scares lined up, and that's all we really need to
Yeah,
say
there's
about
nothing.
it.
Yeah, there's nothing to say about it other than the fact that yes, Universal find a way to make it happen.
Yeah. Next up was suggested by a couple people. I had this on my list as well. I'd be interested to see how this could work. I think it could, but it would be a stretch, and it would be definitely more of a comedy-based house, and that's Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
I've actually never watched that
So
movie.
this movie's amazing.
And it's one of those ones where I always go buy it on Netflix or whatever the hell streaming service
Yeah.
it's on now. And I always I probably should watch that
It's
because I've heard
hilarious.
it's funny. I heard it's good, but I've actually never sat down.
And it
watched
has a good scare. So it's that typical, like,
Isn't Alan Tudyk in that?
oh, I couldn't tell you right off the bat, but possibly. But it is one of those typical out in the woods slasher hillbilly horror movies. But then Tucker and Dale are just the 2 idiots, stuck in the middle of all this, and all the killing. There's the group of the young kids.
It is Alan. All right, it's Alan Tudyk and Tyler Labine. Okay,
Yeah.
I knew it was Tudyk. Tudyk.
Yeah. So there's like the group of the young people doing nonsense, and they kind of branch off, and then like one by one they're pretty much accidentally killed off.
Yeah, the whole shtick is that like they're not intentionally killing them.
No,
but it
just seems
turns
like they
out to be
are.
that they
and-
are. Yeah,
it
I
looks
just-
like they.
I know I have to go. I have to go watch. this.
One jumps to the
It kind of
away, and the person goes to attack them. They jump out of the way, and they jump into like a lawn chipper, and then their friends find them. Like, oh my god, these monsters! I can't believe they did it. And just these 2 poor bastards that just can't get out of their own way. Again, there's a lot of like good death imagery. It would be very funny. I don't know if I'm sold on it as a house.
I have to go watch the movie. So to be fair, I can't really judge how I feel without seeing the movie. So I probably should go watch it. But yeah, I mean, it seems like one of those movies where it's like, again, kind of like a Terrifier house. It's like lots of like gore, lots of setup.
Lots of gore, not as
of-
outrageous gore, but there's a lot of good
there's
kill scenes.
enough kill scenes in it that you can kind of like
Gore it up.
see why it would work. I have to watch the movie. I know it's funny. It kind of reminds me of like. It sounds like it would remind me a lot of Behind the Mask: The Rise of Leslie Vernon, which is not a 2010's movie. It's a 2000s movie. It came out in 2006. But if you haven't watched that movie's really good.
Yeah.
It's like a whole breakdown of the slasher genre
Yeah.
itself.
Okay.
And it's done up like a pseudo mockumentary about a serial killer.
All right.
And I don't want go if you haven't seen that movie, you should go watch it. It's good, but it kind of gives me that vibe where it's like not everything as you expect is
Everything's
what's
not as it
happening is
seemed.
not what you're expecting, or not,
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. No, I think it would be a very fun house. It would be tough to translate the aspect that these characters are dying by accident, because then you would have to have pretty much 4 or 5 characters in every single scene explaining that. It would be fun though. It would be the comedy house, and it would be outrageous.
I'll have to go watch that now. Maybe that's what I'll watch tonight when
Yeah.
I get home.
So there is a next one up is one that we have talked about in the past again. I think that this would work. I think you might be on board as well. But that's Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. I think with this,
I've actually never seen this either.
Oh God! All right.
Another one I haven't watched.
So this one's good. I think the movie. I think because it came out so.
This is like
So-
2018, 2019.
Yeah,
This
it
is
came
like
out
almost.
It came out
less
the,
than like 5 years
It
ago.
came out like the same time that it did, so it kind of fell into that aspect of this like people just thinking it's very similar to it. It's just like no, this was based off of a book. Like it was, but
it's
it was
not
its
so
own
much like
property.
it,
but the
it's-
movie itself,
It's more like not adult, but like grown up Goosebumps.
yeah. But the way the movie was themed, it was.
Oh, was it?
It fell. It kind of fell into that. Maybe they're just trying to copy it a little bit.
So I think part of my problem is like I don't typically like watching PG-13 horror
Yeah,
because I feel like it's dumbed down so that like,
it's just trying to get a little extra
Teenagers.
box office.
and I think that's the problem. And and again, don't come at me. I know that there's a ton of really good PG-13 horror movies. I've watched a lot of them, but with that one, I felt like it does feel kind of like Are You Afraid of the Dark?
It does,
in a
yeah,
lot of ways.
it is.
So I do have to give it a chance. I got to give it a shot. But as far as a house is concerned, obviously the different stories lend itself to a house.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like a built-in compilation in a way. Like each room would be a different monster from that movie,
Yes.
or from those books.
Yeah, I think it would work. I think it is a lot of scenery changing, and it's just fun, like seeing those characters from literature to screen. I think it was a long time coming. I think because of the success of it, the success of Stranger Things, where it was like these kids-based horror movies. It's young cast or that teenage cast being haunted and stuff like that. I think it works well with its source material. You could have Harold out there in the cornfield area. You could have that big, weird, grossless, pale lady. You could have the whole spider aspect in the bathroom. I know they just did that with bugs, but I think it could work pretty well. Actually, you wouldn't have to stretch this one too much. Next up one is one that we haven't really talked about before, but I think the more I sit on it, I do enjoy it. And this one kind of reminds me of what a black phone kind of thing could be, and that's Split. Of course I had to put an M. Night Shyamalan movie in here somewhere.
Oh well, you are the king of the M. Night Shyamalan fan club.
My boy. I think this would be interesting because much like Black Phone, where it's that kidnapping style movie, they're stuck, they're trapped, it's claustrophobic. The grabber has different masks, which don't necessarily have to do with his personality. It's just different masks for the sake of having different masks. But I think this would be interesting to have that same character, but as the different personalities throughout. Each room is sort of like a different, interaction with a different one. You've obviously finished with the Beast, but you have those other characters throughout. Would be a fun, fun costume house.
You could kind of almost tie in the other two characters from from the team up movie too.
Oh, do Glass and Unbreakable.
You can almost kind of like tie them in a little bit. I mean, you don't have to do it like you can make it primarily about the Split character.
Yeah.
But you could probably tie in those characters a little bit somehow too.
Yeah, I think that would be fun. I think the different rooms would be
the only thing about that movie and about that house that I find hard to translate is, and again, this is just me being, me. Is how do you do that sensibly so that you don't offend anybody? Because it is dealing with a mental illness. It's dealing with people playing somebody with a real mental illness. Like that's a real thing. Split personality disorder is a real thing. I know the movie did it pretty tastefully, and that for the most part, nobody was really upset about it. But I feel like
I mean, they definitely, yeah,
it would be hard to pull off.
yeah. I think, I mean, I think, kind of like, it's not. You just kind of don't mention. You know, you don't mention. I think it's just different
you're
characters
right.
dressed
you,
up.
You don't.
Sort of like how Black Phone. I mean, Black Phone was about kidnapping children.
Right. No, and I get that. Like, I think. People are offended.
it is tough.
People are offended by weird shit, man. Like
Yeah.
I think that's part of the problem, and that's my only concern would be that like you'd have that one group of moms who gets pissed about it.
I
and
think,
like gives them shit when they
yeah,
announce it.
it's tough. If they did an original
not to be the downer on the podcast.
If they did an original and tried to spin that as like the story, I could see it getting backlash. But being based off of an IP that was, I mean, maybe there was backlash about that when that movie came out. I can't remember because it was probably early 2010s, like probably 13 or something.
How long ago was that movie?
It's probably 13 or 14. I'd have to guess.
Yeah, because I was still in Mass at the time when it came out.
Let's see. That movie was
we saw Glass together.
Oh, 2016. So a little bit later than I thought, but still a little while ago.
Mid 2010s.
Yeah, but I don't remember their backlash about it. I remember the movie, doing it appropriately. It would be a tough sell for a house for me. I think it would be fun because I think you could differentiate the characters, which would be interesting. But it would be a kind of how I was with Black Phone. I was I was doubtful. I didn't know how well they would do it, and it worked out fantastic. But it was a tough sell to be like, oh, Black Phone going to be a great house for sure. It takes place in one place. Like, it's just...
Yeah.
It was hard to imagine, but they were able to translate it well, so I enjoyed it.
I have faith that they'd be able to pull it off. That's for sure.
Next up, Tusk. Justin Long, Kevin Smith.
Yeah. Another funny...
Fucking weird
Kevin Smith type movie.
Just because I'd love to see the prosthetic of Justin Long as a walrus man.
That's my biggest thing is like, would they be able to pull
animatronic
that
wise
off?
would be super cool. But everything before then in the movie, like, I mean, creepy doctor house. I mean, it's just it's a fun movie. But sometimes fun movies do not translate into fun or well houses.
No, right, and we've kind of already established that with a lot of the ones we've talked about already. There's a few of them where it's like great fun movie, but how do you make that work as a house?
Yeah, it's tough, and that's the only reason I try to sell it is because I want to see that.
Well, right, I think part of it's kind of like it's like a guilty pleasure type thing.
Yeah,
like we want to see it somehow. Yeah. But
am I going to be happy after I walk out of it? Probably not.
Is it going to be boring? Because like, there's not a whole lot in it outside of Justin Long getting turned into a walrus, literally.
Yeah,
it's a lot of sitting around and talking about nothing.
Yeah,
just watching him devolve. It's almost a body horror movie, and it's at its essence.
Yes,
it's really what it is.
Kevin Smith is a very he loves his dialogue.
He's got weird,
very dialogue heavy movies,
super weird movies, and. I don't know.
I don't think this would work well. I don't. And I would love to see that prosthetic and like make it as like an animatronic, but I don't think it would live up to the potential. So let's move along. We have back-to-back movies. Not back-to-back. They're semi-similar, but let's start with Sinister. With what's his name, Mr. Boogie?
Oh, Mr. Bagul. This
was part of a house. This wasn't an entire house before.
It was a compilation,
but it was part of a compilation house. So, I think, I mean, it's tough to just it seems like we're taking the easy way out, but I think that's just really the best way to do it.
I'll make it easy for you. I don't think it will work it out as a house at all.
I think what it was perfect for what it is, because I don't think there's enough for an entire house.
No, and the thing is that movie it's one of those cases where, unlike a lot of the other ones, it has a bad guy,
but he just kind of lurks.
But he doesn't do a whole lot.
No,
he just happens to be in the videos, telling the kids to do fucked up shit.
Yeah,
and like, what are you gonna? I mean, is your set pieces gonna be? Like,
is it the film? Is it
right?
Not
so my thing would be like, you'd almost want to just do it like make all the set pieces the snuff films, and that's it.
Yeah, but that wasn't the
but that doesn't. But that's the other problem is that like what made that movie so scary is how messed up and out of left field those little films
and
were.
the mysteriousness to it.
We're right, like with the lawnmower one. Like,
Yeah.
you don't know what the fuck is going on until it finally goes over that person's face.
You're like, whoa,
oh, fuck.
God,
Like,
what was
you,
that?
You have
Yep.
the same reaction that
Every time.
Ethan Hawke does.
Yep.
You're
And
like,
he's
fuck, man.
he's watching it in a dark room, lights out.
Right.
You know, like,
I remember the first time I watched that movie. I bought it on Blu-ray. I'd heard so much about it. I finally watched it. I put it in. I had the lights off in the living room, and my wife is
that was
getting
a
like in the
mistake.
kitchen, getting ready to go to bed or whatever, doing don't know what she was doing, but like the very opening scene where the people are getting hung from a fucking branch. I'm
Yeah.
like, this is what I'm getting myself into.
This is what we're watching today.
Alrighty, let's go.
Just another solid Thursday afternoon or
Right,
Thursday
so it's
night.
almost like if you're gonna make a house out of it, it has to just be like Bagul, like telling kids to do weird shit.
yeah.
Like, how do you
it's
make
just a
this
bunch
work?
of kill scenes and stuff.
Like,
yeah.
I'm surprised they could even make it work in a compilation house.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really know what's there.
Yeah. Next on the list, we can skip that because it was. We were gonna mention Insidious, but that's been a house, so we don't really need to dive in too much. It obviously worked well as a house. There's other iterations in the franchise that were released in the 2010s that could work, but I mean Insidious 1, 2 with just the lipstick monster. Again, that's just such a classic like visual villain. Not that he was really in it a lot, but he was definitely the puppet master behind a lot of stuff. So, I mean, it has worked as a house, obviously. So it's just...
well, we've talked about it in the past, and we've gotten yelled at in the past. So it has been a house. I don't know if I want to see it again because, again, I like the movie, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's not something that would sell would make you buy your ticket. I mean, we're gonna buy our ticket anyways, but like,
right.
That's not like okay. I mean, for me, probably more so than you because I do really like these movies. And back when it was a house, that was before I lived down here, so I only went through the houses for one night. So I couldn't even tell you if I went through it for sure. So I would enjoy seeing it again, but because it's been a house, we don't have to discuss whether it could be because obviously it has. It passed the test. So moving along, A Quiet Place. So this is what we were kind of mentioning earlier when we were talking about Don't Breathe. This is that sensory house that I think could work better.
I think this would be, I mean, maybe people think we're crazy, but I think this house would be awesome. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of things you can do with it. I think just the whole idea of doing the complete opposite that you normally see, where it's like blast them with sound, blast them with noise and heat and
Lights
cold
and all this
lights
yep,
and
yep.
music and all this different shit, and turn it on
Visual
your head
overload.
and make it dark and quiet.
Yep.
Like quiet to the point where you
Like,
almost get disoriented.
Yeah. I would love, like we were talking before, I think it would be a fun scene. We've had a lot of these long black tunnels recently. We had it in Hill House. We had it in Black Phone, where it's just this narrowing black tunnel. And I would have the audio playing of just like the woods, just sounds, insects, whatever. And then like halfway through, it's just a very loud like tree branch crunch, like somebody in the group in front or behind stepped on it. And that's when you have also a voice actor, saying, "Oh, stop!" Like, "Oh, run, go, go, go!" And or well, I guess you can't say that because people will run, but like something like warning that you shouldn't have done that. And then you have at the end of the black tunnel just like a big monster growl kind of thing, and you could have an animatronic leg or something like that.
There's a specific noise those monsters in the movie make,
Yeah.
so like you could have that, and that would be really scary. I think there's ways you could do set pieces.
Because you could do the farm, you could do the town, you could do. I think the baseball field was part 2, but like there's different ways that you could implement this.
Yeah,
And I
it's
think
almost
it would be
kind of
fun.
like
You could have the Doomsday
Chupacabra
Shelter
house.
essentially. Yeah,
like
similar.
the Chupacabra house was like you didn't really see the Chupacabra much,
No.
but this one you got to do the aliens. You hear the aliens a lot more than you see them, but.
Yep. And then like the ending scene could kind of be like you see it where it's like when you leave like Bugs or when you left like Killer Clowns and it had big Clownzilla, like you could do that big structure with the legs coming down around you. You could do something like
Right.
that because not all of the creatures were that big. Some of them were smaller, some of them were bigger. So you could do a couple of them in there. But I think this would be a fun, like you said, I think this would flip the concept of a house on its head where it's like, no, this one is meant to be quiet. They're all meant to be dark, but this one's meant to be quiet until the right moment hits. And that's when those audio triggers really play a factor versus having like the music blaring and then a loud audio trigger. This would kind of just dull everything down
Right.
to like a 2 and
Agreed.
really muffle it. I put this on there just for fun because I think this would be a funny house. I don't think anything's scary, but What We Do in the Shadows was the New Zealand movie before the TV show came out. This was the original Taika.
Never seen the movie, but
it's really good. It's similar. It's very similar. It's Taika Waititi.
yeah.
I don't know. I just had to put it on there because it was during the time frame. But I think this is a great comedy house. Would it be scary? Absolutely not. The only scares would be like the door opening and having like
But there's
the
always
characters jump
space.
out.
There's always space for that, like not so scary, more funny, brevity type house, like
Yeah.
the Ghostbusters house.
Yeah, a
Beetlejuice.
little less iconic than those two, but I think
Right.
Still,
It's one of those properties where it's like you would
People
get
wouldn't know
excited
about it,
it,
yeah.
but not a lot of people aren't gonna care.
no. All right. So this is another one, just like our very first one we talked about, that we definitely differ opinion wise, and that's Hereditary.
Yeah.
You could probably speak more on this movie than I. I've seen
yeah,
this
I mean,
maybe
I love
once
this
or
movie.
twice.
This movie is probably one of the best horror movies ever made, and I'm not just saying that. Like, this movie is awesome.
I know I'm in the minority.
Toni Collette is
The new Scream Queen.
tour de force, and she's awesome in that movie. I forget the kid's name that plays the son, but he's amazing. Even the little girl is really, really good. And again, yeah, it's one of those movies where if you're looking for a traditional horror, tropey, campy movie, you're not going to get it. But this movie plays on a lot of different levels, and whether that's family drama, paranormal, all these different things that kind of tie in together. Suspense, thriller, all these different shit. But great movie. But I don't think it would work as a house. There's not enough there. There's no real bad guy. The bad guy is family dynamics is really what the bad guy is in this movie. Is how messed up a family can get. I mean, yeah, I guess you can kind of consider like the devil the bad guy because there's a witch cult like trying to raise the devil essentially. But outside of that, like the scary part about that movie is Toni Collette's grief and her just devolution into madness. Like, it's so good. Such a good movie. But yeah, not gonna work as a house. So I don't know how you feel. I know you haven't seen the movie in a while, but
Yeah, again, this is kind of what we talked about in the beginning of the episode, where a lot of these movies that came out, I guess, have been kind of dubbed elevated horror. This psychological, this non-villainous, non-physical villainous movies are just incredibly hard to translate into a physical media such as a haunted house, where I don't think Hereditary could pull that off. There's obviously like iconic scenes in it, but how do you translate, the girl's head getting whacked by a telephone pole in a moving car? I mean, you can't put the audience, you can't put us in a car.
Right,
It's
no, it would almost be like this. That scene is just the car, the telephone pole, and the girl's head on the ground, and you're walking by it. Like,
so
that's
it
really
loses a lot of oomph, which the scene delivers.
Right, exactly. And the scare in that scene would be like him coming out from behind the car, going, "Oh my god!"
Yeah,
and freak you out kind of that way.
Yeah.
But it's
What did
kind
I
of like
do? What did I do?
It's kind of like a forced jump type thing.
Yeah.
So
And that's what I think, unfortunately, the majority of this house would translate into, because a lot of the stuff, like you said, is not like in your face.
no, the scary parts of that scary scenes in that movie don't translate to the house.
No.
I mean, yeah, the dad catching on fire,
Yeah.
but how do you do that?
Just light a guy on fire all night.
Right, without having like a fire stunt.
Yeah.
You can't really do Toni Collette's character crawling on the fucking wall like a goddamn spider. Like, you can't do that. Really, I mean, I guess you could find a way, but it's hard. I'm racking my brain.
It wouldn't
how it would
translate
work.
as well as how it was in the movie.
No, not at all.
So at that point, if you're going to dampen
It's
it,
kind of how
why
I feel
do
about
it?
Midsummer. I don't think it would fit very well.
Yeah. Ready or Not.
Good
So
movie.
that's a movie you suggested.
Great movie.
I think I saw it once.
Better movie than I expected.
And this would also be like a comedy style
It could
house.
not straight comedy, but there's more.
It's a ridiculous concept.
Yeah, it's more ridiculous. And it'll be kind of. It would be funny to see all like the different characters with like all the different weapons, like just interacting with each other and scaring you, popping out of the room. Being in a big mansion, at least it's not like enclosed in like a tiny house. Like there's a lot of different rooms you can kind of play with.
Yeah.
You can have the bride in certain areas playing off of the other characters, and I think there's ways to make it work. Again, not a whole lot of like gore in it. Like there's gore, but it's not like over the top.
Yeah.
And then like, of course, the end is the end is one of those endings where it's like, wow, that came out of like kind of comes out of nowhere. You kind of see it coming, but you don't see it coming. And that would be kind of cool to see that at the end of the house. But, I'm trying to not give away too much of the movie, but I could see why some people wouldn't think it's as easily translatable, just because, I mean, it really is a bunch of people just chasing after this one person trying to kill them, playing a weird version of hide and seek. But I think there's ways you can make it work. Probably not as well as something like Terrifier, but it would be kind of your gore house if you were to do it.
Yeah. Again, this one, like you said, I watched this one once or twice when it came out. I don't know how well it would translate or not. So the next ones are definitely more. The last three are definitely more up your alley. So I'll let you take the lead on these after I announce a lot of these. But our third to the last one would be The Witch.
Much like Midsummer, you would highly disagree with me. I think this one actually translates better to a house than Midsummer does.
Yeah. Okay.
I know that people are probably going to think I'm crazy, but I think The Witch, being that it takes place more at night than the daytime like Midsummer does, I think that there's probably more scenes in The Witch, even though it doesn't seem like it, where like you could have the little boy, freaking out and dying. You could have the boy meeting the witch in the woods. You could have, the Anya Taylor-Joy's character talking to the goat at some point. You could include the witch coven, maybe more than you do in the movie. I don't think it's one of those where it's kind of like, as a fan of the movie, I'd like to see it happen. I can see why most people wouldn't want it, because there isn't a whole lot going on visually. The movie's really more pushed by the character acting, like the dialogue.
Yeah.
Even though it's really hard to understand for some people, because
The old timey New England.
Yeah, I mean, hey, they went hardcore. It's the same guy who did. It's Robert Egger. Same guy who did The Lighthouse. It's very much like he needs to be like super period accurate.
Yeah.
So he went hardcore with it, and a lot of people don't like it because of that, and I get it. But yeah, I don't know. I want to see it work as a house, so maybe I'm stretching a little bit.
Yeah.
But maybe it wouldn't really work. I don't know.
Well, also coming off of a year where there was a witch house and it didn't necessarily translate to the way that we would have wanted.
Right.
It kind of, it had a softball lob up and it didn't hit it home for us. Speakeasy witches, or just like old timey witch style.
Yeah,
I think it's interesting.
There wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. Either stick with the 20s theming and don't go into this weird witchy realm, demon worshipping realm type thing. It didn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah,
I guess is my point. But even the movie The Witch doesn't really have to do with like traditional witches. It's
almost like the
it's
lore.
a play on the Salem type witch.
Yeah.
That it's that era, it's a time period where like everyone's super hyper religious, but like it plays more on the tropes of paranoia, not knowing who is who, thinking that, basically God is smiting your family. There's a lot of tropes in that movie that are themes in that movie that don't translate to a house. So I get it. Like I think it's more just I want to see it happen because I like the movie so much.
Yeah. Another one you just suggested earlier is Autopsy of Jane Doe, and I thought your take on it was very interesting.
This movie's awesome. Another deep cut movie, like not a movie that everybody's gonna be like, oh sweet, let's go to that. Let's go to that house. But I do like the thought of having a house kind of take place entirely in a morgue, and like obviously like the bad guy in this movie is the dead girl. Without giving too much away, she's obviously not supposed to be not who you think she is or what she is, but like if you set the house up where like she's the centerpiece in a lot of different rooms where like she's on the table, but like things are changing as you kind of go through it. Again, it's kind of like a Conjuring haunted building, haunted area type movie, ghost haunting, but it's all being caused by the Jane Doe. So I think you could kind of do a lot of like the medical, the medical like room, like do up the autopsy room, do up various rooms that are in the movie. There is a room where they cremate bodies, so a cremation room. There's a lot of different things you can do with it, and kind of keep that theming of the movie. And again, it's one of those movies. It's also one of those movies where like I enjoy it so much that I think it could work.
You're just like pushing for this because I really want to see it.
But I also do think that this one fits better than like The Witch does.
Yeah,
I think there's better set pieces.
I say it puts you in a better location. Again, like we were talking with like Midsommar or stuff like that. It's like The Witch, from what I remember, outdoorsy. The huts, the slums. It just like. How well can you translate it inside? I'm sure you can do it great, but it gets boring. Right. Whereas inside of a morgue, interesting because there's multiple rooms that you can go through. And this one can kind of function like the Black Phone, like really dark, play on the sounds, like make like the noise, like your audible, your oral sensory or whatever, whatever that word, audible, whatever the word is, but like auditory. Yeah, make it that sense heavy and do a lot of the noise because like obviously she's causing a lot of this paranormal activity to happen. Yeah, but she doesn't move much. Mm-hmm. But it's one of those movies where like you're always waiting for something for her to move, even though she never does. Yeah, and I think that's tense. It creates that suspense, and I think they could do that with the house. Yeah. And then last on our list was the last edition. You suggested. Now, this one I hadn't seen, so I'll let you kind of polish off this list for us, but that would be Crimson Peak. Oh, another good movie. Is that the Tom Hiddleston? It is Tom. It's Tom Hiddleston. I don't remember the girl's name that plays the main character in it, but it's another Del Toro movie. So you know that with Del Toro, you're going to pieces, lots of good set pieces, lots of good monsters. Yeah, like he's really, really good at coming up with fantastical monsters. So you're gonna get that sci-fi, fantasy, paranormal, haunting type stuff. Plus, it's in a big, old, spooky mansion too. So like, there's ways to make this work. I kind of think of it like Hill House, but less modern. Yeah, definitely more of that 1800s set piece. The 1800s time period. So you can kind of do it like a period piece. Yeah. So the costuming would be really cool. The monsters, again, would be really cool if they could make it work. You could make good use of the stilt walkers with this movie. Yep. Yeah, I remember there's like trailers and stuff of it, and I understand the main like aspect of it, or the main, not aspect, but the overall theming. Well, the cool thing about this movie is that like the monsters in it, and again, very much in the vein of a Del Toro movie, is that the monsters, they're monsters, but they're really not the bad guy in a way. Yeah, like they're trying to help the main character, but just by default, but they're there. They're spooky, scary monsters, and the real monsters are the human characters in the movie. So that's what makes it so good. Again, if you haven't seen it, you should go watch it. But I just think that Del Toro's vision, his visual style, really lends itself to houses. Which I'm surprised they've never done like a Pan's Labyrinth house. Yeah, because he's got some really cool monsters in that one. Yeah, the designs on that are crazy. So that wraps up our 2010's IPs. Obviously, we didn't discuss every IP that came out during that. There's like hundreds of them. So. And we're already stretching the hour mark or hour plus mark. So, I mean, just let us know what you guys think. I think we dissected these in a fair way. That some of these, like, just because it's a great movie doesn't mean it's a great house. Yeah. I don't think that everything in my eyes, like there's, we look for the same things in houses. I think, like we want that villain, we want that main character, we want that main set piece. I want that story that kind of lends itself to a house. It has to be an easy story to translate to. Yeah, I mean, you can't get too even if convoluted. It's not easy. It has to make enough sense to you when you walk into it, and like you can't just mash a bunch of things together and make it
makes sense. Like it has to kind of follow. With IPs, it's easy because you kind of usually have a reference to go by. You've already seen the movie.
Yes, yep.
So you kind of know the backstory, so it's easier to do that. And it ends up being like, hey, remember this from the movie? Hey, remember that from the movie? Which is kind of what they're used for. But
Yeah.
like the Michael house here, it's like doesn't really follow the original movie very well, but you've seen it so many times.
You understand.
You just recognize all
Yeah.
the different set pieces.
Yeah. So, like I said, let us know what you think. A lot of these were suggestions from you guys, the fans, and that's really cool that we have that interaction with y'all. We are in the midst of that season where we just kind of wing it. We don't necessarily have a topic next week. We don't have a topic next week yet. I'm sure we'll come up with one.
We didn't have this topic till like 2 days ago. So.
Yeah, so we will kind of hit the ground running. I know we have a lot of research to do. We have to start watching the Chucky TV show because we got to talk about that at some point since it's the only confirmed property. I haven't watched a lick of it yet.
I haven't touched it.
And I think the Chucky aspect might play into our killer reviews that we're going to bring back next month.
Yes, finally.
It's been a while since we did a killer review, so we're gonna dive into one of those during the Valentine's Day aspect of next month. But stay posted on our socials. We'll let you know about what's next week's coming. And until then, this is Nick.
And this is Seamus.
Happy haunts.
Cursed. It's got a death curse.
You know, it's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare. And again, I would just like to thank Vampire Stepdad for letting us use his music for our intro and outro music. So if you would, just go check him out. Spotify, Facebook. Again, that is Vampire Stepdad.